Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto built harem with Anko, Tayuya, Kurenai, Mabui, Yugao, Tsunade, and Fem Kyuubi, Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Eventually the girl continued the conversation, asking, I take it you're a shinobi? Because I noticed that headband you're wearing, or are you just making a fashion statement? You noticed that? Alright. Naruto cheered. Pointing a thumb at his headband the blonde continued, only a super cool shinobi can wear these. Oh really? I see. That's very impressive, Haku said, getting a big smile from the blonde as her rubbed the back of his head and chuckled happily at the compliment. But, Haku began as her head lowered and she looked off to the side. Does that mean you're training for something dangerous? The girl asked. Kind of, but it's more about just getting stronger, Naruto responded. Looking back to the blonde Haku asked, you look pretty strong now, isn't that enough? No, I need to get stronger and stronger, and I need to keep practicing, Naruto quickly told her. How so? Why is it so important? Haku asked. She wanted to know what his reasoning was, if it was like hers or not. Hearing her question, Naruto's big grin slowly turned into a gentle smile. He'd proclaimed that he'd become stronger numerous times in his life, but hardly anyone ever asked why he wanted to become strong. Even with his family and friends, they'd usually just help him out without ever asking why. It felt oddly nice hearing her ask that. There's a lot I have to live up to be strong enough to bear the name Uzumaki, but. Naruto was telling her as he paused to think about his loved ones, his mother, Amy, Hinoka, old man Hokage, Auntie Makoto and Sasuke, Sakura and Kakashi, Tsunade and Shizune, hell even the old pervert. Thinking about all of them, it was easy for Naruto to look Haku in the eye and say, above all else, I want to protect those I love. So that these peaceful days never have to end, if I'm to do that I need to become stronger. Hearing his reply, Haku gave the blonde a warm smile. Yes, that sounds like a wonderful reason. Never lose that will to protect, and I'm sure you'll become very strong, Haku told him as she reached out to grab the handle of her basket. As she stood up, she saw the blonde grin at her small encouragement. Turning to head back to base, the girl said to him, goodbye, we'll meet again sometime. As Haku walked away, Naruto realized something and called out to her, hey wait. I never got your name, mine's Naruto Uzumaki. Hearing him, Haku stopped. She debated with herself for a moment on whether or not she should tell him her name, but ultimately decided there was no harm to it. Turning at the waist, she looked back at the blonde and told him, my name's Haku. Even with Tsunade tagging along, it didn't take too long for Sasuke to reach their training area. The blonde came into view. Both him and Tsunade saw Haku walking towards them. As the girl passed them both, Sasuke and Tsunade glanced over at her. Is she new to the area? Tsunade briefly wondered as she tried and failed to place a name to the girl's face. In a small nation like Wave, it wasn't uncommon for most people to have at least heard of the land's other inhabitants. A pretty girl like that would definitely be well known, if only as eye candy for the local boys. Not dead yet, huh? Sasuke asked with a smirk as him and Tsunade got closer to him. What would go and give you an idea like that? Naruto questioned as he folded his arms while still sitting on the ground. We just wanted to see if you were alright, Tsunade said, spending most of the statement with her head turned to look over her shoulder at Haku's retreating form till turning to face Naruto just before finishing. Spending all night out here by yourself, you had us worried, the woman told him with a smile on her face. Nah, I only came out here because his mother would have killed me if something happened to him, Sasuke commented as he slipped his hands into his pockets. Even if he was worried about this idiot, there's no way in hell he'll just admit it. Geez, thanks, Naruto told him with a bit of annoyance in his words. Seeing this, Tsunade couldn't help but smile even more at the scene. Even if everything went wrong tomorrow, they still had these precious moments now. A little while later, and now it was Sakura and Kakashi's turn to come out looking for the blonde, and at this point Sasuke and Tsunade. As Sakura called out for their teammates and Tsunade, Kakashi kept up with her, only needing a single crutch to get around comfortably at this point. Knowing Naruto, he could be anywhere, and even Sasuke and Tsunade are still out here. I wonder where they are. The Pinkett wondered as the two of them came to a stop around the area Kakashi brought them for training. As the words left her mouth, both her and Kakashi's senses kicked in and their heads jerked forward to see a kunai sailing through the air. Once the projectile landed in the ground between them, the pair turned their heads upward to see who threw it. Sure enough, high in the tree top was Naruto, and sitting next to him was Tsunade. Right there, high above the ground, the woman sat with her arm hugging the tree trunk next to her. After her and Sasuke found the blonde, the two shinobi went right back to training, neither one of them wanting to fall behind the other. Since there wasn't much to do today, Tsunade stuck around to watch them, marveling at how far they could make it up the tree. At some point, shortly before Kakashi and Sakura arrive, the woman had gotten it in her head that it might be nice to see the world from up there. It took some convincing, even if just a little, to get Naruto to carry her up with him. Despite being scared shitless as Naruto ran up the tree with her in his arms, and even to a point now that she was sitting so far above the ground, Tsunade couldn't say she regretted her choice. In fact, just beneath that sense of fear was a rush of exhilaration. The view's quite nice from up here, Tsunade yelled out to the two as she waved at them with her free arm, not too much though, out of fear of falling. While both Kakashi and Sakura found it impressive that he could not only get himself up that high, but also bring a grown woman with him, Sakura had to at least yell at Naruto for potentially risking the life of their client's daughter. Oh come on Sakura, it's fine, see? Naruto called out with a confident smirk as he let his body fall backwards, keeping his feet stuck to the branch with chakra as he came to stand upside down on the branch. To no surprise, the action freaked out both Sakura and Tsunade. Naruto, don't do that. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Tsunade yelled at the blonde, both of her hands firmly wrapped around the tree now after feeling like her heart had dropped to the ground. Having her yell at him nearly made the blonde lose his concentration and sent him falling to the ground, but Naruto managed to flip himself over to the trunk so he could hold on. Sorry, the blonde apologized as he tried to focus on attaching himself back to the tree so he wouldn't slide back down. You shouldn't worry too much. If he messes up, I'll grab him before he hits the ground, Sasuke said from the tree next to Naruto's. Since he didn't have to carry anyone, the Uchiha was standing a few branches higher than where Naruto and Tsunade. Yeah, I'd like to see you try. Naruto yelled up at the boy, though Sasuke just shrugged the taunt off. After making sure that everyone was okay, Kakashi and Sakura headed back to the house to leave them to their training, offering to take Tsunade with them once Naruto got her back on the ground. If Tsunade thought it was terrifying going up, then she damn near had that heart attack coming down, squeezing her eyes shut so she didn't have to see the ground getting closer as she rode on the blonde's back. Now, another day had come and gone, with the sun having set and everyone sitting around the dinner table again, everyone except for Naruto and Sasuke. Now they're both late. I wouldn't have expected that from Sasuke, Sakura commented as Tsunade and Hinoka placed everyone's plates out on the table. As the teen finished saying this, the door behind her clicked open. Supporting one another, Sasuke and Naruto slowly walked in through the open door. Seeing them, Tazuna was the first to say anything. What happened to you? You look like something the cat dragged in, the old man told them. Even worn out as they were, Naruto had the energy to give a big grin and proudly said, "We both made, all the way to the top." Hearing this, Kakashi told them, "Good. Now we move on. Starting tomorrow you're both bodyguards for Tazuna." Hearing his sensei, Naruto immediately went to celebrate with a big ol' cheer as he tossed his free hand into the air and consequentially sending him and Sasuke down onto their asses. At least his antics got a laugh out of the others. Once Super was finished, Tazuna figured now was a good time to address this while everyone was still around the table, and so he began, "In a few more days the bridge will be complete. I have you to thank for that, but I've been meaning to ask, why did you stay and protect me even after finding out I lied to bring you here? Those who stray from the path of justice have no courage, but under the wing of a strong leader cowardice cannot survive," Kakashi responded. When he was met with blank expressions, he explained, that was a quote from the first Hokage. Listening to Kakashi's words and staring at Naruto, who was resting his head on the table, Inari began to think about his father, about Kaiza, about the advice he told him, and about what happened to him at the hands of Gato. As he did, tears began to well up in his eyes. Soon they became too much and started rolling down his face before falling and hitting the table as the quietly asked, "But why?" Not quite hearing him, Naruto raised his head. "What did you say?" the blonde asked. Slamming his hands down on the table, the boy stood up, tears silently flowing down his cheeks. "All this stupid training is just a waste of time. Gato's got a whole army. They'll just beat you down and destroy you. These cool things you all say, they don't mean anything. No matter what you do, the strong always win and the weak always lose," Inari loudly said as the others watched on. After the outburst, a short moment of silence fell over the room, that is until Naruto spoke up. "Just speak for yourself," the blonde said as he put his head back down in his arms. "It won't be like that for me, you got that?" Naruto told him. "Why won't you be quiet? Just looking at you makes me sick. You don't know anything about this country, you're just butting in. Always laughing and playing around, you don't know what it's like to suffer and be treated like dirt." Inari yelled, striking a chord with the blonde. Clenching his fists, Naruto kept his head down. "Listen to yourself. Whining and complaining like some sorry little victim," Naruto said, getting a small reaction from Inari. "You can whimper all day for all I care. You're nothing but a coward," Naruto told the boy, lifting his head up to look Inari in the eye. Unable to say anything in return, Inari just watched as Naruto got up and left the table. Sitting out on the edge of the dock running along his house with his knees pulled up to his chest, Inari tried to work out everything that has happened over the last week in his head. He just couldn't understand how someone could keep a smile when faced with someone as powerful as Gato, and every time he saw Naruto or the others smiling like that, he felt bad about himself because he could. As he sat there in silence, a lone figure came up next to him. Without a word, Hanoka sat down next to the boy and let her feet hang out over the calm water, her eyes focused on the moon reflected in the night sea. For a while they just sat like that, no words passing between them as they kept their thoughts to themselves. "He doesn't hate you," Inari heard. Lifting his head up, he looked over to Hanoka with a curious look. Not once had he heard her say anything since she arrived, but surely that voice had to be. "Your grandfather told us about your father," Hanoka said, her eyes never leaving the moon's reflection. "Naruto also grew up without a father, and his mother was sick for many years after his birth. The village he grew up in, despite the sacrifices that were made on that day, they hold an unspoken grudge against him for the part he unwillingly had during that night. His whole life he's wanted to gain their recognition and protect the few precious people he's found with all his strength. Even so, I've never seen him cry or give up, Hanoka said as Inari listened to every word. I think he gave up crying one day and strove to push past all the pain and loneliness. If anyone knows what you're going through, it'd be Naruto, Hanoka said. Turning to look at Inari, Hanoka had a gentle expression as she told him what Naruto said earlier. Harsh as it was, he's probably told himself that 1,000 times. Once Hanoka finished, the two of them continued to sit there for a while longer, their gazes turning once more to the open sea. After listening to her, Inari had a lot more to think about, even if he didn't quite have a conclusion yet. Beneath the nearly finished bridge, a small wooden boat approached, silently bringing Zabuza and Haku to their destination. As the pair neared the bridge, the Gato's voice started booming over the radio. Still wasting time licking your wounds? I hired you to do a job, you know. Are you listening, Zabuza? Hey! The short man got out before Zabuza stopped on the device. Haku, are you ready? The man asked his accomplice. Yes, the teen answered before both turned their heads to look up at the bridge, the sound of construction work echoing down to the water's surface. Rushing downstairs, still wearing his gray pajamas, Naruto poked his head into the kitchen to see Tsunade washing dishes. Where is everybody? Where's they all go? The blonde hurriedly asked. Pausing in her housework, Tsunade raised her head before looking over at the blonde. Oh, Naruto, your sensei wanted to let you rest. You got the day off, the woman told him and watched as Naruto went to run back upstairs. Gwa, I knew it. They ditched me. The blonde cried out along the way as he pulled off his pajamas while heading back to his room. After rushing to get changed, Naruto came running back down, yelling out a quick goodbye as he left through the front door. Tsunade once more looked over her shoulder, having just missed him this time. With a smile, the woman just shook her head and went back to the dishes. Hold on, what the heck is this? Tazuna fearfully asked after he and the others had arrived at the end of the bridge to see his fellow coworkers beaten up and left unconscious. What happened? Someone was here, someone got to them. The man yelled out. Could it be? Kakashi wondered, his senses going on high alert as thick mist rolled in. Sasuke, Sakura, Hanoka, get ready. The man called out to the others as they formed a defensive circle around Tazuna. I knew he was alive. He just couldn't wait for round 2, Kakashi thought as he waited for Zabuza to make the first move. Sorry to keep you waiting, Kakashi. Zabuza's words called out from the mist before in an instant the group was surrounded by several water clones. With a smile, Kakashi turned at the hip to look at Sasuke. With the okay from his sensei, Sasuke leapt into action as the clones came in to kill. With honed speed and skill, the young Uchiha slashed through each and every clone before quickly retaking his place in the formation. Oh, so you could see they were water clones. The group heard Zabuza once more. Looking further down the bridge, they saw the man and Haku standing at the edge of the mist. Looks like you've got a rival, Haku, the man said. So it seems, Zabuza's young apprentice responded. For a few moments both parties sized the other up. Eventually, Kakashi was the first to break the silence. So I was right, it was all an act. I'd bet you've been pulling that trick for a long time, the silver-haired Junin said. Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke spoke up to gain the man's attention. Once he had Kakashi's eye on him, Sasuke made a single request, that he'd get to fight the girl in the mask. Over with Zabuza and Haku, he's quite impressive. Even though they were only 1/10 the strength of the original water clone jutsu, he did destroy them all, Haku commented. That move still gave us the first advantage. Now use it, Zabuza instructed her, neither agreeing or disagreeing with her comment. Right, Haku said before making her approach. With light feet and nimble movements, the girl spun her way over to the group, kicking up wind and water in her path. As she got closer, Sasuke's eyes never left her form, studying her every movement. This is it. This'll be the first real battle I use them in, Sasuke thought to himself as he readied his kunai for the oncoming attack. In the back of his mind, memories of the past welled up. It was late in the day and the skies over Konoha had turned a vibrant shade of orange. Sitting atop a large boulder within an unmarked training group, Sasuke was staring blankly at the setting sun, his legs pulled up tightly against his chest. He'd been sitting in this same spot for hours now in an almost trance-like state. Your mother's been worried about you, the boy heard from the side. He didn't bother looking though, he already knew who it was. Climbing up on the rock, the young woman with long brown sat next to him, having a similarly saddened expression. She had a small mole under her right eye, wore a long-sleeved, high-collared purple shirt with the Uchiha clan symbol on the back, baggy blue pants, a shuriken osler on her right leg, red armband on her left arm, and a long purple fingerless glove that ran nearly the length of her arm. For a while the pair sat there in silence. So much had happened and none of it felt real. The Uchiha clan, a powerful clan that had been formed long before shinobi villages had been reduced to a handful of individuals in a single night. How did this happen? How could it have happened? Why did it happen? These were among many questions those left kept asking themselves. This chain of events stretched back to the night of the Kyuubi attack. On that night, Kushina had been targeted by a powerful Sharingan wielder after the seal holding back the tailed beast had been weakened by childbirth. Despite the fourth Hokage's best efforts, the man had extracted the Kyuubi and placed it under his control before unleashing it upon an unsuspecting Konoha. The village had been left in ruin and many of the shinobi who had been faced the beast and lived placed the blame on the Uchiha. Even after the report Kushina had given, placing the blame on a single rogue Uchiha, many of the shinobi held their fear and distrust for the whole clan. When it came time to rebuild the village, many of the clans were moved to different parts of the village. The Uchiha were no different. Although Fugaku had voiced his disagreement, the clan had been moved to the outskirts of Konoha. Many within the clan took this as a sign that those in charge of the village had turned against them, a feeling that only grew as time passed. For years Fugaku struggled to maintain peace between the clan and the village, choosing to believe in the third Hokage and Kushina to help him heal the rift that had formed. While it couldn't be said Fugaku had support within the clan, those who opposed him came to view him as a traitor who let the village walk all over them. After years of this environment swirling with hate and mistrust, things had come to a boil. The rogue faction within the clan waited for their chance, and while Fugaku was alone, they struck quickly and without mercy. They had thought that the rest of the clan would come to their side once the fighting started. They had been wrong. By the time the village had sent Anbu to deal with the coup d'état, the Uchiha district had already become a bloodbath. Clan member against clan member, brother against brother, friend against friend, the Uchiha had fought with one another to the bitter end. Today they'd been informed that Itachi was to be labeled a rogue shinobi for the sake of the village. "I'll bring him back," Sasuke eventually said, breaking the silence that had formed between the two of them as they sat there. Looking to her side, Izumi saw the young boy staring out into the distance, his fledgling Sharingan active. "One day I'll clear Itachi's name and bring him home," Sasuke declared with conviction. For the first time in days, smile formed on Izumi's face as she listened to the boy. "And when you do, we'll welcome him with open arms," the young woman said. "Those eyes," Haku commented, her Senbon held firmly against Sasuke's kunai as she stared into his Sharingan. "That's right, the blood of the Uchiha runs through my veins," Sasuke told her with a confident grin as brought his kunai back and made an attack of his own. If he was going to bring Itachi back, then losing here wasn't an option. Watching the two clash with one another, Zabuza contemplated what their next action should be. They had only planned for Kakashi and the Uzumaki girl, yet this boy not only possessed the Sharingan but was matching Haku in speed. Haku, enough playing around. Finish this quickly. Zabuza yelled out to the girl. Right, Haku responded as she jumped back, gaining some distance from the Uchiha. Coming to a stop, she began to build up a large amount of chakra. I'm sorry it's come to this, Haku told him as the temperature dropped. Forming an odd hand sign, the girl began her jutsu. Starting from behind the Uchiha, the water from the clones started to rise and freeze, forming panels of reflective ice. Sasuke watched as more and more ice mirrors formed, eventually making Atom out of the floating panels. Even with his Sharingan, this jutsu did this girl possess a Kekkei Genkai of her own. Once finished, Haku dropped her hands back to her sides and stepped towards the closest mirror as everyone watched. Without hesitation, she continued forward, merging into the ice till her reflection was shown on each mirror. Not willing to leave this to Sasuke any longer, Kakashi started to rush over to the boy but was intercepted by Zabuza. If you enter this fight, you fight me, Zabuza told Kakashi as he stood in his way. Not good, Kakashi thought to himself before calling out for Hinoka to help Sasuke. With a quick nod, the girl started to run for the ice mirrors. Are you sure about that? Hinoka heard as she, Tazuna, and Sakura turned around to see a second Zabuza behind the bridge builder. With terror in his eyes, Tazuna watched as the water clone swung his sword, only for it to burst into water as golden chains pierced through it. As Tazuna took a few shaky steps back, Hinoka rushed back over to him. The moment she leaves, the bridge builder is dead, Zabuza warned as he held his blade ready. Though it was a bit aggravating to be put in this situation. Originally, Haku was supposed to handle the Uzumaki girl while he and Kakashi had their rematch. With the Uchiha boy in the mix now, he had to stall for time. Now, we'll begin, Haku said as her reflections pulled out Senbon in unison. As she began her assault, the blinding speed at which the Senbon came at him was enough to give his Sharingan a challenge. Despite his best attempts to dodge and deflect the weapons, Sasuke still took several dozen hits as his body and clothes were being shredded by seemingly endless barrage of needles. Hinoka. Sakura began as she watched this through the barrier the red-haired girl had made. She didn't need to say any more as Hinoka shifted the chains around to make a gap for Sakura to exit from. Rushing out, Sakura reached into her pouch for a kunai as she ran for the ice mirrors. Take this. The Pinkett yelled as she leapt into the air and tossed the blade at one of the mirror. Just as it was going to make contact, Haku's upper BDY came out of the mirror and grabbed the implement by the handle. Looking over to Sakura, Haku silently gave the blade a single twirl before firmly grasping it again. It was a decent attempt to save her teammate, but Haku was simply too fast for something like that to work. Haku was about to re-enter the mirror and continue her assault when a swirling sound, caught her attention. Jerking her head to the side, Haku saw as the shinobi she'd spoken to in the forest ran at her with a clone and a swirling blue orb in his hand. Making a quick jump at the last second, the blonde thrust his hand out, shouting, Rasengan. Before his attack hit and kicked up a large cloud of dust and debris. With several quick slashes, the front door, along with a small portion of the wall of Tazuna's house, was reduced to small chunks. Clattering loudly to the ground, the pair responsible for the damage stood on the other side of the hole with crooked grins on their faces as Tsunami spun around to see them. As the woman stood frozen to the spot, the pair of katana-wielding thugs walked into the building. So you're Tazuna's daughter, huh? The shorter of the two asked as the looked the scarred woman up and down. Too bad, but you're going to have to come with us, the man told her. In the bathroom, Inari was busy washing his hands when he heard a loud crash accompanied by a scream from his mother. With hardly a second thought, the boy ran out to see what had happened. When he got to the dining room, he saw that the table had been turned over and two of Gato's men had his mother cornered on the other side of the room. Mother! The young boy immediately called out. No! Don't come out here! Run away! Hurry! Tsunade yelled at the boy with widened eyes after hearing his voice. Don't move! The taller of the two thugs ordered the boy as he looked over his shoulder at the doorway Inari was standing in. With Inari being too frightened to run, the man turned to his companion. Should we take this one too? No. Gato asked for just one hostage, the shorter thug told the man. All right, the taller man said as he turned around to face the kid, bringing his sword up to his chest by the sheath. Then let's waste him, the man happily suggested as his hand firmly took hold to the blade's handle. As the man began to draw his blade with a gleeful grin, Tsunade called out for him to stop. After a moment, the man glanced over his shoulder, waiting for her to give him a damn good reason to put his sword away. Looking the pair dead on, Tsunade began, Please don't hurt my son. I'm begging you, he's just a boy. With her expression growing more intense, Tsunade told them, I'll do anything. Just please don't hurt him. Hearing her, the shorter of the pair smirked. As his companion regretfully sheathed his sword again, the man turned to Inari. Looks like your mom came through for you, kid. You're lucky, the man told the boy, who was quietly crying and clutching the doorway at this point. As Inari sunk down to his knees, the taller man muttered that it was a waste to just leave him. Give it a rest, you've already drawn blood today. Forget it and help me get her out of here, the shorter of the two told him as he took a few steps towards Tsunade and grabbed her by the wrist. Turning her around, he pulled out a piece of rope and tied her hands behind her back. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Inari sobbed into his knees as Tsunade was led outside by the two thugs. What can I do? I'm too weak to protect you. I'm scarred. I don't want to die. Inari was crying when a single word entered his mind, coward. Jerking his head up, the boy recalled what Naruto, and then Hanoka, had told him the night before. Looking down into his open hands, Inari then thought back to the advice his father had given him, if you really care about something, protect it, even if you have to put your life on the line. Protect it with both arms. Kaisa's words rang through his head as he wiped his tears away. Can I be that strong too? Inari wondered as he thought of his loved ones. Standing up, Inari's hands fell to his sides as he looked forward with determination in his eyes. The men were nearing the end of the dock connecting to Zuna's house with the path heading further into Wave when Inari called out for them to stop. Looking back, the pair looked on in amusement as the boy stared them down. How cute. You've come to save your mama, the taller of the two snidely remarked after Tsunade called out for the boy to go back to the house. You, Inari said as his hands clenched into fists. Better leave my mother alone. The boy yelled out as he started to run towards them. Hee hee, this kid's a little short on brain, the taller thug commented as he placed his hand on his sword. Take him down, the other man said as Tsunade frantically looked between them. If you hurt him, I swear I'll. Tsunade was yelling at them when the shorter of the two thugs whacked her in the back of the neck. Shut up and take a nap, the man said as the woman's unconscious body fell the dock. As Inari came in range, the two struck out with their swords, each making a single, clean cut as they leapt forward before finishing of the practiced motion by smoothly sheathing their blades. From behind they heard something fall to the wooden dock, but that sound, that's not a body. Standing up straight, the pair looked behind to see a sliced log laying on the dock. A substitution jutsu, the shorter of the two said, immediately recognizing the technique. Now, the question was who pulled it off. The woman. She's gone. The taller thug said after noticing that Tsunade was missing as well. Sorry I was late, The pair heard and their eyes immediately looked up to see Naruto placing Tsunami's unconscious body gently down further along the dock. Though heroes are supposed to show up at the last minute anyway, the blonde said as Inari opened up his eyes to see that he was slung over Naruto's shoulder. Naruto, it's you. The boy happily said as he turned his head to look at the back of the blonde's head. Who else? Naruto asked as he put Inari on his feet. Looking the kid in the eyes, Naruto gave him a big smile and told, "You did great." Seeing the confused look on Inari's face, the blonde told him, "When you charged they forgot about you mom for a minute. That gave me the chance to get her away from them." As the blonde said this, the pair of them looked over to the woman. After a few seconds, a question popped into Inari's head. Naruto, how did you know these samurai guys were coming here? Oh, that. In the forest I found a boar that had been cut up, the same with the trees around it. When I followed the cut marks they lead me back here, Naruto told him. I see, Inari commented just before the tall guy spoke up. Blah, blah, it's just one of those useless shinobi Tazuna hired, the man said as he scratched his chest. Let's get him, the shorter thug said with a smirk as his companion happily agreed. Even after the pair stared to run at them ready to draw their blades and cut them down, Naruto didn't seem too bothered by them. In fact, the blonde didn't even bother turning around to look at the pair. As the pair approached, two clones burst from the water on either side of the dock, each with a scroll in hand. Unraveling the scrolls, the two clones unsealed their contents, engulfing Gato's men in thick clouds of black smoke. Moving through the cloud, both men collapsed upon leaving it, their momentum sliding their bodies within feet of the real Naruto. I can't move, the tall guy got out as his body lay there, unresponsive to any command his mind sent. What did you do to us? What was in that shit? The other thug managed to say through gritted teeth, unable to even move his head to glare at the blonde. I don't know what's in it, but I was told that if you inhale that stuff you won't be able to move for days. Something about nerves and muscles, but I kind of didn't pay attention to the specifics, Naruto answered the man. Before he had left on this mission, Kushina had given him the scroll and made sure that he knew not to open it unless he wanted whoever breathed the smoke in to be out for a long time. She'd kept him there for nearly 10 minutes, only letting him leave once she was sure he wouldn't play around with it. Damn, you, the man grumbled as it slowly got harder and harder to even speak. Ah, you did it, Inari happily said as he looked from the beaten thugs to Naruto. Standing up, Naruto put a big grin on his face as he turned to Inari. You better believe it. The blonde cheered as he pumped his right fist out at Inari. Huh. The blonde was still a little awed, but Inari couldn't help his own grin from forming. That was so excellent. Just like a real shinobi. Inari happily said. Hee hee. You twerp, I am a real shinobi. That's what I've been telling you. The blonde told Inari as the two of them started to laugh with each other. Once they finished laughing, Naruto took the time to tie the two thugs up just in case before picking Tsunami up and walking back to the house with Inari. The two of them pulled out a spare futon and tucked the woman in. As they finished getting Tsunami comfortable, Naruto felt that he should apologize to the kid. However, Inari gave him a blank expression in response. Well, it was pretty mean of me to call you a coward. It's not true, you know, Naruto said as he turned his head to look at the kid and reached out his hand to ruffle Inari's hair a bit. 'Cause you were really brave, Naruto told him with a big grin, a grin that quickly turned to a confused look when Inari started to cry again. Dang it, I promised myself I wouldn't cry anymore. You're gonna make fun of me again and call me a baby, but I can't stop. Inari said as he tried his best to wipe the tears away. With an understanding smile, Naruto turned his head to look out the window. What are you talking about? Naruto asked, resulting in Inari's crying to die down a bit as he gave the blonde a confused look. You're happy. What's wrong with that? When you're happy, it's okay to cry, Naruto told the boy. Naruto, Inari said, letting his tears flow freely. Okay. The blonde started as he got up. I can leave everything here to you without worry, Naruto said as he went to leave when he felt a tug on his pant leg. Looking over his shoulder, he saw Tsunami's hand had slipped out from under the blanket to lightly grab hold of him. When she had woken up to see Naruto and Inari sitting next to her, it wasn't hard to piece together what had happened. Even now, she knew where he was going to go, and that more than likely there would be a fight waiting for him. Do you have to go? The woman asked him as she looked up into his blue eyes with her own black orbs. Thinking about it for a moment, Naruto closed his eyes as he turned his head to upward. Opening his eyes, the blonde told her, I'm sure they'll be alright without me, but I can't just sit around while my friends risk their lives. Understanding what he meant, Tsunami let go of his pant leg and watched as he left. Right now there's nothing she could say that would stop him. Naruto, be safe, the woman wished him well as he went. Running through town as fast as his legs could carry him, the sound of Inari's feet hitting the wooden path echoed could be clearly heard. Naruto and the others are fighting, risking their lives while we do nothing. We've gotta fight too, Naruto said to himself. He had one goal in mind and he wouldn't stop until it was complete. Rasengan. As the word left Naruto's mouth, the powerful attack collided with the ice mirror, tearing through it and hitting the bridge below. It would have taken too much time to re-enter the mirror, and so to avoid being torn apart, Haku leapt forward, rolling out of the way. What in the world was that? Tazuna asked in disbelief as they not only saw the destructive power of the Rasengan but felt the shock wave that spread out through the bridge. I don't know, Sakura told the man after a moment, her eyes wide at the display. Since when could Naruto do that? The Pinkett wondered to herself. Maintaining the barrier of golden chains around them, Hinoka looked on with a smirk. When she had met Kushina and Naruto, the boy was in the process of learning the jutsu. It took him months, but Naruto finally had the ability to use his father's jutsu. That jutsu, isn't it? Zabuza openly wondered as he watched the dust cloud slowly drift away. So, Master Jiraiya has already taught him the Rasengan. Looks like Sakura and Sasuke are going to have to up their training if they don't want to fall behind, Kakashi thought with a small smile hidden behind his mask. Looking back to Zabuza, the silver-haired Junin said, I take it this is the first time you've seen the Rasengan. Why would a brat like that know the fourth Hokage's jutsu? Zabuza demanded as his head shot back around to glare daggers at Kakashi. First it's the other brat who turns out to have the Sharingan, and now this. It's quite simple really. Similarly to how the Sharingan is Sasuke's birthright, it could also be said that the Rasengan is Naruto's, Kakashi told him and watched with a bit of amusement as the information sunk in for Zabuza. No, it can't be, the man muttered. I had heard that the fourth Hokage had had a son before he died, that would mean that. Damn it. We underestimated those brats, Zabuza thought to himself before charging Kakashi. If they wanted to make it out of here alive, they had to deal with them quickly. It's him, Haku thought as she remained in the kneeling position she'd rolled into, staring at the blonde as she recalled their encounter from the previous day. That strength. Yes, I can see your determination, your desire to protect those you care for, she thought as she watched Sasuke run out of her ice mirror dome through the opening Naruto had provided. So how long have you known that? Sasuke asked, opting for this over thanking the blonde for the save. Naruto was going to answer that, but one look at Sasuke had the blonde telling him, what the hell happened to you? You look like you got your beat. Gah, shut it, the Uchiha told him. Just because he slipped up a little doesn't mean he needs Naruto to point it out. With Sasuke out of her jutsu, there was no longer a need to have the ice mirrors up, they'd just eat away at her chakra if she left them. With a quiet hand sign, the girl released the jutsu, resulting in the mirrors cracking and falling to the ground before shattering into tiny particles of water and ice. As the mirror fell down, the mist rapidly grew thicker and thicker, to the point that it was difficult to see your own hand in front of your face. Zabuza is moving forward with the plan. I mustn't lose ground here, Haku thought as she pulled out more of her senbon. Moving so their backs were pressed against on another as the mist thickened, the two teens scanned the area for any possible attacks. So, what did I miss? Naruto asked as he strained his eyes to see anything at all. Zabuza and Kakashi are facing off while Sakura and Hinoka protect Tazuna, but Sasuke was saying when his ears picked up on the sound of something cutting through the air. Pushing Naruto down, the two of them rolled out of the way as a volley of senbon flew by. The fake tracker from before is more than just show. She's got a Kekkei Genkai that manipulates ice, and if we're not careful we're dead, Sasuke warned the blonde as they laid low. Looking around, Naruto grew frustrated with his inability to see anything. Gah. Then what do we do? We can't even tell where she is, Naruto told the Uchiha as Sasuke continued to scan the immediate area with his Sharingan, even if it barely gave him an edge over Naruto in this situation. With the mist being this thick, the Sharingan is useless, and even the most powerful jutsu won't help if you can't hit your opponent, Haku thought to herself as she waited in the mist for the slightest of sounds to tell her where Sasuke and Naruto were. Picking up on the distinct sound of kunai moving through the air, Haku pinpointed where the two were. Blindly lashing out won't help you, the girl thought to herself as one of the throwing knives passed by her head. Moving silently, the young woman descended on the two Konoha genin who were once more standing back to back. This time they were slowly moving in a circle and throwing kunai out into the mist. I'll end this now, Haku thought with senbon in hand as she came up on the pair. Throwing her arms out, Haku sent the needles flying, puncturing the two precisely where she wanted. As the sound of their bodies hitting the floor reached her ears, Haku turned to go and help Zabuza. That is until the sound of popping came from their position. Clones. A distraction, Haku thought as she looked back over her shoulder. Moving in time, Haku managed to avoid the giant ball of fire that engulfed the immediate area. After coming to a stop, Haku pulled out a single senbon, readying herself for any possible attack they may launch. They threw kunai not to hit me, but to lure me into a trap. So, they've already figured it out. We're not using our eyes to fight but our ears, Haku concluded. Forgive me, Zabuza. I may not be able to help you in your fight, the girl thought to herself. Those two should be able to handle themselves, but still. Kakashi's thoughts went to Naruto and Sasuke as he contemplated what his next move should be. With Hinoka's barrier in place, Tazuna should be safe from Zabuza attacks, giving him the option of aiding Naruto and Sasuke, but Zabuza would know that. If he just ran off without a plan, then he'd risk putting them in even more danger by dragging Zabuza into their fight. If that's the case, he'll just have to finish things up with Zabuza first. Pulling a scroll from one of the pockets on his vest, Kakashi tossed it into the air as he swiped a bit of blood from the gash Zabuza had left on his chest from the beginning of their fight. Catching the scroll, Kakashi smoothly unraveling it with a swift motion of his hand before smearing his blood along the inside of the parchment. Zabuza, I don't mean to spoil your fun, I know how you like to stretch these things out, but how about we put an end to this now? Kakashi asked into the thick mist as he twirled the unraveled scroll around his body. Finishing up, the man tossed the scroll into the air in such a way that it rolled itself up before landing on a hand sign he'd formed. Come on, what do you say? We're both busy people, Kakashi said. Tempting. I'm wondering how you intend to back up such brave words. Show me, Kakashi. Zabuza's voice rang out from the mist. Taking out another clone, Haku was beginning to grow tired of this. After their first plan failed to catch her off guard, they had moved on to flooding the area with shadow clones. Utilizing the memory transferring ability, they had to pinpoint her location every time she fought and defeated one. Every time one popped, she'd have to move away quickly before being overwhelmed with many more clones. With all the noise they were making, it was near impossible to tell the original from the others. The mist, while it hid her presence, was becoming a hindrance. As she was working out what her next move should be, Haku heard Naruto call out the name of his attack, the one that had destroyed her ice mirror, only this time she heard it from two different sources. Immediately after hearing him, Haku was nearly blown over by the shock wave that escaped the collision. As a result of this shock wave, the mist surrounding the teens was blown back and revealed to Haku what had happened. A short distance away she could two clones, each with its own Rasengan. They had clashed their attacks and used the enormous power within that clash to blow away the mist. Found you. Haku heard as the clones around her rushed to her location. She had already been surrounded while this mist was still thick. Now that it's cleared, there was nothing to stop them from launching a counter-attack against her. Lashing out with Senbon, Haku tried to take down each clone before it reached her while cutting out a path for her to escape through. Her plan was working and soon she'd be in a safe position to continue the fight. Just a few more strikes and her opening would be clear. That was until the other boys showed up, having seen through her plan. Fire style. Phoenix Flower Jutsu. Sasuke called out before lifting his hand to his mouth and blowing out several small balls of fire. Weaving them through Naruto's clones, the young Uchiha aimed them at Haku. In order to avoid the flames, Haku ran through several hand signs in order to summon forth an ice mirror to use as a shield. While she was saved from fire, Haku had been left open for the blonde's attacks as she had been forced to stop her forward momentum. Spinning around, Haku managed to parry the first clone's strike and dispelled it, but as they kept coming, the girl was quickly overwhelmed. With a left hook from one of the clones, Haku was sent flying to the side but was stopped from going too far as another clone slid up under her and kicked her into the air. While in the air, more than half a dozen more blondes jumped up after her, repeatedly punching and kicking her between them before finally one of them slammed his fist into her mask and sending her crashing back down to the ground. Running over to her, Naruto reached down to grab her by the back of her haori and flip her over as she pushed herself off the ground, her chipped and cracked mask falling to the ground in the process. Zabuza, I've failed you, Haku thought to herself as she watched Naruto's fist come towards her face. She had accepted her fate, accepted the fact that she couldn't win this fight and that she was no longer of any use to Zabuza, so why? Why did he stop his fist less than an inch from hitting her, and why was she so happy that he had stopped? Pulling his hand back, Naruto stared into Haku's eyes as Sasuke ran over to them. Naruto, what are you doing? Why'd you stop? We have her right where we want her, Sasuke yelled, yet his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. It's you, Naruto softly said as he let go of the girl and stood up. This didn't make any sense. How could that kind girl he'd met in the woods be the same masked shinobi helping Zabuza? Keeping herself propped up on her elbows, Haku stared at the blonde for a moment before asking him, why did you stop? Am I not your enemy? Yeah. But, Naruto responded as he took a step back. As the conversation they'd had ran through his head, Naruto dropped down to sit with his legs crossed while scratching his head vigorously. Gua, what the hell's going on? The blonde all-put shouted to himself. Obviously there was something Sasuke was missing as he looked between the fake tracker shinobi and his blonde teammate. Glancing up to look further down the bridge, Sasuke could see that the mist was still too thick to see past. Kakashi and Zabuza should still be fighting and they should wrap this up quickly so they could go and help their sensei. Shaking his head, Sasuke decided to leave things here to Naruto while he went over to where Kakashi and the others were. Don't mess this up, Naruto, the young Uchiha thought with one last glance over his shoulder before he entered the thick mist around Kakashi and Zabuza. Zabuza. Naruto began as Haku watched him get his thoughts together. Looking into the girl's eyes once more, the blonde asked, "How did a guy like Zabuza become so important to you?" Staring into his eyes, Haku started to recall memories from her path, good and bad. "There was a time when I had others who were important to me, my mother, and my father," Haku began, telling Naruto about her parents, the bloodline war that led her father to murdering her mother after finding out about their Kekkei Genkei, about how she was left a homeless orphan left out in the cold, and how Zabuza had found her and trained her to be his ultimate weapon. He had given her a purpose, a reason to live. All right, Zabuza, enough talk. It's time to finish it, Kakashi told Zabuza as his summoning dogs held the rogue shinobi in place. It won't be with Sharingan, imitations of some other shinobi's tricks. No, it's time I introduced you to my own jutsu, Kakashi said as Zabuza glared at him. Sitting opposite one another, the atmosphere surrounding Naruto and Haku was uneasy. The boy had sat and listened to her story. The pain she's had to go through was something Naruto couldn't begin to understand, even if he had suffered because of his Jinchuriki status. Even if the whole village had its back turned to him, he had always had his mother with him, and over time he had found more and more people to stand by him and share both the joy and sadness of life. Haku, though, all she had left in this world was the bond she shared with Zabuza. Haku watched as the blonde stood up and then simply stared when he offered her his hand. "I'd like it, if I could become someone precious to you," Haku heard him say to her. With widened eyes she continued to stare at him as his smile grew. "But, we are both shinobi, pitted against one another by the paths we've taken. Could you really become precious to someone you may have to kill?" Haku questioned the blonde, the small glimmer of hope in her eyes dwindling. It was only reasonable that as long as they worked for Gato that her and Naruto would be enemies. Even if they both made it out of this alive, they'd simply go their own ways and more than likely never see one another again. Shaking his head, the blonde kept his hand out for her to take. "I don't care about what might happen. If you never try, you'll never know what could happen," Naruto told her. Hearing his words, Haku's hand tentatively started to rise up. Reaching out for Naruto's hand, Haku's fingertips were just about to brush against his skin when she got a bad feeling. "I'm sorry, Naruto," the girl thought as she pulled her hand back and quickly rose to her feet. "I can't accept your offer," she thought with renewed determination in her eyes as she ran through several hand signs to create a new ice mirror. "The mist is clearing," Sasuke mentally commented as he ran through the mist. As he moved forward, two silhouettes came into view, one of them moving quickly towards the other. "That's," the young Uchiha thought as a flash of gold entered his vision. In the blink of an eye, Kakashi, Zabuza, and Haku were left wide-eyed as golden chains surrounded them. "What is this?" Kakashi wondered as he looked from a stunned Haku to the summoning scroll riddled with Senbon and finally to the chain binding his arm that had kept him from finishing his attack. Why did she? Haku thought as she looked from the dying Chidori in Kakashi's hand to the red-haired girl standing off to the side. "My future's all used up, Kakashi," Zabuza gleefully said as he reached up for his sword now that Haku had gotten rid of Kakashi's summons. However, his movements came to a halt as Hinoka tightened the chains around him and Haku, binding the two in place. Kakashi pulled his hand back once Hinoka released the chain around it. After taking in Zabuza and Haku's position, the man turned to Hinoka. "Why did you step in?" Kakashi asked the girl. For Hinoka's part, she had the decency to act sheepish once Kakashi asked her that. the cool and collected body language she had a moment ago completely gone. Turning to the man, Hanoka threw her arms up in front of her and began frantically waving them around. She had been content to let Kakashi handle everything, but then Haku's chakra showed up next to Zabuza. All of the sudden, she got worried and just rushed in without thinking. "Hey, what's going on?" Naruto blurted out as he ran up to Sasuke, who had stopped a few yards away from Kakashi. "I don't know," Sasuke told him as Naruto stumbled to a stop next to him. "But it looks like it's over," the Uchiha commented as he watched Zabuza and, to a lesser degree, Haku struggle and fail to get out of the chains binding them. Turning his Sharingan off, the teen slipped his hands into his pockets as he started walking forward again. Naruto wasn't sure what had just happened. One minute he was with Haku and the next she's gone. When he went to look for her, he finds out that Hanoka had everything just about wrapped up. With Sakura calling out to him and Sasuke, it seemed to him like everything had worked out for the best. Well, this is how it turns out, huh? Bound up tight by a little girl. Some demon you are, a man's voice said, directing everyone's attention to the end of the unfinished bridge. With the mist completely gone now, they could Gato standing there with a cast on his arm and a smug grin on his face as he stood in front of a small army of hired thugs. "Gato, I don't understand. What is this? Why are you here and who are these thugs you've brought with you?" Zabuza questioned the man. "Well, you see, there's been a slight change in plans," the small man said, tapping his cane against the ground as his smug look stayed firmly in place. "According to the new plan, you die right here on this bridge, Zabuza," the man tells him. "What?" Zabuza questioned as his eye slowly widened. Damn it all. He should have killed the swine when he had the chance. "That's right, you're too expensive. So I've decided to take you off the payroll. Of course, even these thugs I brought with me cost something. If you could manage to kill off a few of them, that'd be appreciated," Gato told him. Keeping his eyes on Gato, Zabuza told Kakashi, "It would seem our fight's at an end. Now that we're no longer on Gato's payroll, the bridge builder's safe." "Yeah, I suppose you're right," Kakashi said as Hanoka let the two rogue shinobi go, pulling her chakra chains back into her body. Up ahead, the silver-haired Junin could see Naruto and Sasuke getting ready for a fight with Gato's men. "That didn't last very long. You two can just stay out of my way," Zabuza said as he walked between the two Konoha genin, getting them to lower their stances as their attention turned to him. "Gato's mine," Zabuza said as his eye narrowed and he took hold of Kubikiribocho. "Wow. That's enough of this, do it." Gato circled out as he nearly stumbled over his own feet as he turned to hide behind his men. Zabuza made short work of any of Gato's men who stood between him and his goal, cutting them down where they stood. Coming out of the group, Zabuza saw Gato running to the end of the bridge. Turning around, Gato was just in time to see Zabuza's blade come up and slash through his chest, sending blood flying. The cut was deep, but not deep enough to kill. Zabuza wanted him to feel every second of this. Re-gripping his blade, Zabuza continued to make slash after slash till the short man was barely able to stand. Gato truly was a pitiful sight, and with a single kick Zabuza sent the man plummeting over the side and into the sea below. He'll either bleed out or drown, both were options Zabuza could live with. Turning back to the group of men Gato had brought with them, Zabuza let out a low grunt as he watched them part for him. Taking his time, the man slowly walked back to where Haku stood, silently passing by Naruto and Sasuke. "Come on, we're leaving," Zabuza told the girl as he put Kubikiribocho on his back. With a quick glance to see Naruto staring back at her, Haku settled her thoughts. "Yes, let us leave," Haku told the man with a smile on her face. "Please don't be saddened by this, Naruto. Even if this is the last time we ever meet, you have indeed become someone very precious to me, Haku thought as she turned to leave with Zabuza, catching a glimpse of Naruto running towards them out of the corner of her eye as she did. As the blonde was about to call out to the girl, the sound of metal repeatedly hitting concrete rang out across the bridge, stopping even Zabuza as he and Haku looked back with everyone else to see one of the thugs with a metal pool standing at the front of the group. "Don't go getting too comfortable," the man said as others soon joined in on his bravado. "This party ain't over yet. Who's gonna pay us now that Gato's gone? No way we're gonna leave here empty-handed. So we'll just have to hit that village and see what they've got for us." "Not good," Kakashi remarked as the group of thugs erupted into loud cheers. "Zabuza?" Haku asked the man as he turned her head to look up at him. He could tell exactly what she was getting at just by looking in her eyes. "Fine. We'll help out a little," Zabuza told her as he went to grab his sword again. "Get 'em boys," the man at the front yelled as the band of thugs ran forward. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately for the thugs, they didn't get far as a crossbow bolt came sailing through the air to land in front of their charging group. The thugs, along with everyone else, turned their eyes to the far side of the bridge. There Inari stood with his crossbow in hand, Tsunade at his side, and the townsfolk standing at his back armed with whatever they could find and ready to fight for their homes. "There's one little thing you're forgetting about. Before you set one foot in our village, you'll have to go through all of us." A man at the front with a mining axe in hand yelled out, followed by loud cheers from everyone else. "Inari," Naruto happily called out as he saw the boy. With a wide grin the boy told him, "Heroes arrive at the last second, don't you know?" Seeing this, Tazuna was brought to tears. "They've all come, the whole village. No way I'm going to miss out on all the fun," Naruto thought as he turned to the already shaken thugs and called forth a small army of clones to face them. Seeing this, along with the villagers and Zabuza getting ready to fight, the hired fighters turned tail and ran back to the boat they arrived on as quickly as they could. Some of the men simply dove off the bridge, concluding that the waters below would be safer than staying up on the bridge. As the villagers started to cheer at their victory, Zabuza took his hand off of Kubikiribocho's handle. "What a waste of time," the man muttered. Just as he and Haku were about to continue on their way, Naruto ran up to them. Wait!" the blonde all but yelled out as he came to a stop within arm's reach of them, breathing a little heavy after the short sprint. After catching his breath, the teen held his hand out. With a bit of surprise on her face, Haku stared down at the open hand. Though it didn't take long for a warm smile to spread across her lips as she reached out to take his hand. As kind as ever, I see," Zabuza thought as he observed this small gesture. Zabuza wasn't the only one to see this, however. Walking up to them, Tazuna was certain he'd kick himself for this later, but, "Hey, don't take this the wrong way, but you did just get rid of Gato for us," Tazuna said as he walked up to Zabuza, getting his and Haku's attention. "It would be rude of me if I didn't at least offer you a place to rest the night as thanks," the bridge builder told him, trying to hide the chill that ran up his spine as he made this offer to a man who had been gunning for his life just 15 minutes ago. After that time went by and the bridge was complete. Zabuza ended up staying longer than just a single night. Everyone except for Naruto were put on edge with him there, but eventually they got used to the temporary living conditions. When it came time for Naruto and the others to return to the village, there were a few tears shed on both ends during the farewells, and it was decided that the bridge would be named the Great Naruto Bridge. Washing the dishes, Tsunade had a small smile as she thought about the blonde who had changed their lives. "I wonder what Konoha looks like," the woman thought with a small chuckle. "Gua, you got to be kidding me." Amy groaned as her and Hanoka sat and watched Kushina helping Naruto train in their backyard. She was certain that she'd have a best story to tell about the mission her team went on while he was gone, but then he comes back to tell her about what he's been through. This is so unfair, the girl said, muffling herself by biting into her shirt. Hanoka had been trying to comfort Amy for a while now, but there was really only so much she could do in this situation. Maybe she's just out of touch. Or maybe it was just difficult to understand someone like Amy. She really couldn't tell at this point. Come on, Naruto. You can do better than that. Kushina shouted at the blonde as he tried to stand on top of the small pond they had but ended up falling down to his knees. I heard from Kakashi that it took you a week to complete the tree climbing exercise, so now we're going to get you running on water within 3 days. The woman loudly said, having every bit of confidence that Naruto will meet her expectations, even if her constant coaching was ruining his concentration and resulting in him repeatedly falling all the way into the water. Within a secluded room of the Hokage's tower, Haruzan had called in his old teammates along with Danzo, Shikaku, and Inoichi to handle a rather unique case that Naruto had brought before them. Standing in the center of the room was Zabuza Momochi, rogue shinobi of Kurigakure. Naruto had pleaded with him that Zabuza and his apprentice Haku be allowed to stay in the village. While it would be a large boost to the village to have a shinobi as strong as Zabuza join, it's not as simple as saying yes or no. Not only do they have to consider any possible motivations Zabuza may have for joining the village, but they also have to consider how such an act would affect their standing with other shinobi villages, especially with Kiri in this case. It was safe to say that they'd be here a while. With a loud slurp of noodles, Naruto let out a content sigh. Nothing like Ichiraku ramen to help you refuel after training. The blonde happily said as the owner of the small restaurant, Tsuki, and his daughter, Ayame, both smiled at his praise. Since Naruto was a little kid, he'd been coming here, first being introduced to the ramen shop by his mother. In all those years, Tsuki and Ayame have never treated him unfairly. Hee, always nice to hear, Tsuki said as he turned around from stove. So mind telling us what kind of training Kushina's been putting you through? Past couple of days you've been showing up with wet clothes, Tsuki asked the blonde. Despite living for so many years in the villages, Tsuki still had a hard time understand even half the things shinobi did, but it was still interesting to hear about what they do. She's teaching me to walk on water, Naruto told them with a big grin. He just about had it down at this point, but Kushina still had him practicing. Before he stopped by Ichiraku's, the woman had decided to test his chakra control by throwing tennis balls at him while he stood on the water. Avoiding them was easy enough, for the most part, and his clothes only got wet because of the water that splashed around under his feet. Just the trip over here was nearly enough to dry out his clothes today. Walking on water? Ayame asked with a raised eyebrow. It seemed a little on the unbelievable side, but she'd heard of stranger things from shinobi, not to mention Naruto had no reason to lie to them. Resting her elbows on the counter, the girl placed her head in the palms of her hands as she kept her eyes on Naruto. Shinobi sure do a lot of unbelievable things, don't they? Ayame commented. You got that right, the teen told her as he went back to slurping down noodles. He didn't get to much further into his bowl, however, when he felt a pair of eyes on him and heard someone's stomach rumble. Looking to the side, he saw a man with short brown hair, black eyes, and wearing circular glasses poking his head past the cloth flaps. The man was staring as the blonde's bowl intently, with a small bit of drool coming out of his mouth. Once he saw that Naruto was staring at him, he averted his eyes, choosing to stare at the ground. Turning to Tsuki, Naruto whispered, "Hey, who is that guy?" Leaning in, the restaurant owner told him, "Whoever he is, he's been lurking there for a while." Hearing this, the blonde glanced again at the strange man, only for said man to duck around the corner. This back and forth of Naruto glancing over at him only for him to duck away continued for a few more times. Soon Naruto grew annoyed with this and darted out past the cloth flaps to confront the man in the street. How am I supposed to eat my ramen with you staring like that? If you're hungry, go in there and order some. Naruto loudly told the man, pointing back at the stand as he did. Who said I'm hungry? The man softly asked before another growl from his belly left him with an embarrassed expression. Seeing this seemed to wash away Naruto's annoyance. The man was clearly hungry, so Naruto offered to pay for his food, betting it was because of money that he was just standing out here. Several bowls in and Naruto was starting to wonder what the hell he agreed to. It's good, huh? You want another bowl? Old man Tuki asked the man, to which he happily said yes to. Ah, brother, Naruto let out with a sigh as he followed his new friend out of the ramen shop. No, you weren't hungry at all, the blonde sarcastically remarked as he closed his now empty frog-shaped coin purse. I'm sorry. I kind of got carried away there, didn't I? The man apologized as he rubbed the back of his head. The man was about to offer to pay him back when Naruto cut him off. Ah, don't worry about it. I was happy to help out. Looking to the man, Naruto asked, so anyway, tell me about yourself. What's your name? I take it you're a stranger around here, right? That's right, the man said, cheering right back up. I come from the land of birds, my name's Chishima. I've traveled here with a mission for Konoha's shinobi, Chishima told the blonde. Giving the man an odd look, Naruto told him, I hate to say it, but it takes money to get a mission. Reaching his hand up, Chishima began scratching his cheek as he admitted, I just finished paying for it out of my own pocket. That's why I'm totally broke. Really? So then this mission must mean a lot to you, Naruto concluded. With a somber expression, Chishima told Naruto, it could mean the difference in life or death for two of my closest friends. Life and death? What sort of trouble are they in? Naruto asked. Seeing that Naruto wanted to hear him out, Chishima gave him a warm smile and asked if there was anywhere they could go to talk. After walking to the nearby park, Chishima began his tale as the two of them sat down at a bench. Sagi and his younger twin sister Toki have been close friends of mine since we were little. We were raised like siblings. Sagi is now lord of the land of birds, Chishima told Naruto. If you were raised like siblings, then Sagi must be pretty young for a feudal lord, Naruto commented, seeing as Chishima couldn't have been too much older than Naruto was. Why yeah, Chishima commented as he turned his head to look at the blonde. Things have been very hard for my friend Sagi recently, first with the death of his father, Lord Awashi, and soon after that he himself was nearly taken by illness. Even now he's still recovering, and Lady Toki has changed since then as well. She no longer shows her face in the village and chooses to seclude herself from others. Sagi and I have become worried about her, but she refuses to open up even to us. We just want to see her smile again, Chishima told the blonde as he stared up into the sky. Hearing what Chishima had to say, a determined look fell across Naruto's face. Alright, leave everything to me, Naruto told the man. Aside from the issue with Zabuza, Hiruzen was having a normal day. They still had yet to come to a decision on what to do with the rogue shinobi, and for the time they were keep round he clock watch on him and Haku. Sometimes he wondered if Naruto would be the death of him. Hey, old man Hokage, Naruto all but shouted as he flung open the door and ran into Hiruzen's office. Here they go again. Though at least it can't be any worse than when he brought Zabuza to his attention. What can I do for you, Naruto? Hiruzen asked with a grandfatherly smile. He was honestly happy to see the boy, even if he caused trouble for the old Hokage from time to time. Standing outside the tower, Chishima stared up at the building. Since many classified documents and village secrets were kept in the Hokage's tower, it was sometimes difficult for even low-ranked shinobi to walk through the halls freely. A citizen of a far-off nation like Chishima had no chance of just walking right on in, and so he waited out here while Naruto headed inside. "You've picked a good one to have on your side," Chishima heard someone say. Looking to the side, he saw Kakashi leaning up against a wall reading a book. After they'd gotten back from Wave, Kushina had insisted that she take over Naruto's training for a week or two. It wasn't really a situation in which the man could refuse, so aside from the daily missions it's just been him, Sakura, and Sasuke. "Oh, thank you," Chishima softly said to the man with a hopeful look on his face. He truly wanted to believe that his nation's woes could be remedied with the help of Konoha. "As it is, the amount of money we've been given normally wouldn't be enough. Still, we've decided to send a team out to investigate this cursed warrior," Hiruzen was telling the blonde. Hearing the reason for the blonde's visit was a bit of a surprise for the old man. As the man explained the mission to Naruto, it brought a small smile to his face when the boy froze up at the mention of a ghostly apparition haunting the land. Even with Hinoka living with them, it would seem that Naruto still had that childhood fear, and memories of him telling a much younger Naruto ghost stories came flooding up to the front of Hiruzen's mind. "Naruto, I can't afford to send a team of the Junin, or Chunin, and even a team of Genin would be too expensive for the land of birds to afford right now, so I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to take this mission knowing that you might not get paid," Hiruzen told the boy. Despite his shaking knees, Naruto didn't hesitate to accept the mission. "Good to hear," Hiruzen told him. "With that settled, I want you to go home and get everything you'll need for the trip. As soon as Neji returns from his mission with Lee, you'll be heading out with him and Tenten with Kushina as team leader," the Hokage told him. "Huh? Neji and Tenten?" Naruto semi-asked with a blink or two. With a big grin forming on his face, Naruto happily agreed before running out of the office. The next day had Neji Hyuga and his teammate Tenten waiting around the front gate. "We've been standing here for a half hour now. When are Naruto and Kushina-sensei going to get here?" Tenten questioned. Tenten was a skilled kunoichi, practicing every day to become deadly with weapons of all shapes and sizes. Though it would be difficult to haul around hundreds of pounds of weapons, so she took to using summoning scrolls. As a result, it didn't take long for her and Kushina to cross paths, and shortly after that Tenten began fuinjutsu lessons under with the Uzumaki woman. While Neji had never been taught by the woman, he too was familiar with Lady Kushina. Over the years she'd often visit the Hyuga clan. She had tried and failed to help the branch families discontinue the practice of using the caged bird seal, but even after the numerous alternatives she brought before the clan, many in the main branch were set in their ways and refused to budge on the matter. It was safe to say that she was loved more so in the branch families rather than the main family. "Here they come," Neji told the girl after a moment. While Tenten had been leaning up against a tree, Neji had been standing around staring down the main road. Since he was staring down the main road, he was the first of the two to see the two Uzumaki approaching with Chishima. As they approached, Kushina stretched her arm up and waved to the two of them. Since she was going on a mission, Kushina had switched out her usual clothes for the standard Junin outfit, and her long red hair was now pulled into a long ponytail. "Sorry for taking so long. We decided to stop and get a bite to eat before we headed out and kind of lost track of time," Kushina called out to Neji and Tenten. As they got closer, Naruto went on ahead of Kushina and Chishima, running up to Tenten and Neji. "Hey guys. You excited as I am? We get to go on a mission together," the blonde happily said as he came to a stop next to them. "It's exciting to be on the same team as Kushina-sensei, if that's what you mean," Tenten teased the blonde, finding his excitement contagious as a smile crept up on Naruto may be strong, but a mock fight between friends is completely different from a fight out in the field. Her and Neji both planned to keep an eye on the blonde and help out if he needed it. As Naruto started on about how Tenten should be excited with him on the team as well, Kushina and Chishima walked past the three of them. Come on, the land of birds is pretty far and it's not getting any closer with us standing around, Kushina told the three genin, getting them to quickly fall in line behind her. It had taken the group several long days of travel to reach this point, but finally their goal was coming within view. By this time tomorrow they should be walking into the capital of the land of birds. With the sun slowly sinking below the horizon, they set up camp and got a small fire started. Sitting around the fire they enjoyed each other's company while eating, some eating more than other. Ah, delicious. Is it all gone? Chishima asked after wolfing down his fourth bamboo food container. You sure eat a lot for being so skinny, Tenten commented as she handed the man another bamboo container full of rice. I know. I'm sorry. Everyone is always wondering where I put it all, Chishima admitted as he started eating again. Hey, by the way, is there really such a thing as the cursed warrior? I mean, does anyone even believe he's real? Naruto asked. With a bite of food still in his mouth, Chishima turned to answer the blonde. Some think it's the disembodied spirit of Sagi's father, Lord Awashi. I've never liked that word, disembodied, Naruto said as a chill ran up his spine. Well, forgetting the ghost for now, why don't you tell us more about the history of your land? Neji suggested. It wouldn't be good if Naruto was frightened by silly ghost stories before they even arrived at their destination. All right, Chishima quickly agreed, seeing no reason why he couldn't or shouldn't tell them. It's called the Land of Birds because our capital is built on a lake to which the birds come when they migrate. It's always been a green, peaceful place made fertile by the waters from the lake and canals, Chishima told them. However, he guessed that they wanted to know more than what a simple pamphlet might explain, and so Chishima went on. The first signs of trouble came with the sudden death of our previous leader, Lord Awashi. As to who would take over the leadership, it was between his son, Lord Sagi, and his most trusted advisor, Lord Komei. Lord Komei argued that Sagi was far too young to assume the role, and there were many who agreed with him. Nevertheless, Lord Sagi was chosen, largely because Lord Moso, our high priest and my master, agreed to act as regent, advising Sagi and helping him to govern. Then, less than half a year later, Sagi too came down with a sudden illness, but fortunately he was able to recover and has slowly been regaining his health. Since that time, Lady Toki has changed, almost becoming a different person. She has retreated from view and sees no one, Chishima told them. It was about that time that the cursed warrior began appearing in the capital. Rumors started to spread about Lord Awashi's death, that it was not a natural one. People began to say that the cursed warrior was the spirit of Lord Awashi, come back to Earth to seek vengeance on those who murdered him. Chishima then explained how the cursed warrior started. Ha! I don't believe for one second that this spirit is real, Neji remarked. You sure? Naruto asked as he turned to Neji, a scarred look on his face despite his best efforts to hide it. It's not like spirits don't exist. Just look at Hinoka, she's been dead for years, the blonde reminded him. Turning his attention to Naruto, Neji told him, just because we have one confirmed case of a wandering spirit does not mean that all ghost stories are true. It would be in everyone's best interests if we looked at more reasonable explanations first. But, Naruto was about to start when Tenten spoke up. Come on Naruto, Hinoka's such a kind and sweet girl. No one would even guess she was a ghost if they weren't told. Are you really going to compare her to this cursed warrior guy? Tenten reasoned. She understood that he was scarred by ghosts and creepy stories, but there really was no need to get all worked up this early into the mission. Yeah. Well, what if? What if this cursed warrior guy is just what ghosts are like when they're after revenge? Naruto shot back after taking a moment to think of a reasonable reply. Hinoka is the only example we have, so even if you're right, saying it without evidence is just blindly guessing, and that's not going to help us, Neji told the blonde. While the three of them were getting into their ghost talk, Kushina had just been sitting back and listening in. Ghost stories were fun and all, but she had to agree with Neji here. The chances of this cursed warrior actually being a spirit were next to none. Excuse me, but who's Hinoka? Chishima's question had the others stop their conversation as all eye landed on him. As their conversation had gotten more and more derailed, none of them had stopped to consider that Chishima had never met Hinoka. With a warm smile, Kushina reached into her vest and pulled out a picture. Handing it over to the man, she told him, "Hinoka's the girl in the middle." Taking the photo, Chishima looked at the image. In the image he could see Naruto and Kushina standing on either side of a red-haired girl as they stood in front of a house. All three of them had wide smiles, but Hinoka's seemed to radiate pure bliss as she stood there with small droplets forming in her eyes and Kushina's arm wrapped around her shoulder. "And she's a ghost. She looks like an ordinary girl to me," Chishima remarked as he looked up from his picture. "Aside from her being a spirit, she really is just an ordinary girl," Kushina told the man. Turning her head, the woman stared out at the last rays of the sun as she told him, "That photo was taken the day she came to live with us. She was so happy that she couldn't stop crying, and we all stayed up late just so we could spend more time together. She felt bad about that the next day after Naruto got in trouble for sleeping in class. Yeah. She spent hours trying to make it up to me even after I told her it wasn't a big deal," Naruto added, forgetting about this cursed warrior for the time being. Not much else was discussed about the cursed warrior that day. They just finished their meal, talked a little, and then went to bed. Tomorrow the real mission began. Kome, being a top strategist for the Land of Birds, had a sizable estate. Tonight, like every night, he had his personal guard watch and patrol his home, even if there was a boot in men with all the rumors flying around. Stopping outside Kome's room, one of the guard reported that nothing out of the ordinary had been spotted. Sitting up in his futon, Kome let the man know that he heard him before telling the man to turn in for the night. After the man left, Kome continued to sit there for a while, listening. Soon his ears were met with the sound of moving armor. Reaching for the katana he kept by his futon, Kome noticed his door slid open, and what he saw was a figure clad in white armor and wearing a demonic red mask. It was about this time that Naruto and the others had entered the city, running through the streets with the blonde carrying Chishima on his back. As they approached Moso's residence, an alarm was set off. Coming to a complete stop, it didn't take long for them to see part of the cloudy sky being lit up by searchlights, and ultimately the ghostly figure floating above Kome's estate. Clad in white with a halberd in hand, wearing the mask of an evil demon with eyes of fire. "There can be no doubt about it, that's the cursed warrior," Chishima said as the group stared at the figure. "Let's not waste any time, after him." Kushina commanded the three genin as she took off after the fleeing specter. She was quickly followed after by Neji and Tenten, with Naruto falling in line after them once he put Chishima back on his feet. Following the warrior as he effortlessly moved through the air, they were soon led to a small, rundown shrine on the outskirts of the city. Coming to a stop outside the building, Kushina put her arm out, motioning the others to stop as well. "Neji, what do you see?" Kushina asked the teen, who had his Byakugan active and scanning the area the moment they arrived at the shrine. "I don't see anyone inside," Neji told her, getting Naruto and Tenten to give the teen odd looks. "We know he went in there," Naruto told Neji as the boy deactivated his dujutsu. They had been following the cursed warrior the entire time without losing sight of him once, and they saw him go into the shrine. Yes, but there is no human presence in that building. At least not the presence of any living person, Neji said. Even a ghost can be seen by the Byakugan. He tested it himself with Hanoka's help. It's not the same at a living person, but she still has a presence. What the heck is that supposed to mean? Naruto asked the Hyuga as he started to shake. Quiet, Kushina told them as her eyes narrowed at the shrine. Slowly, the wooden doors before them creaked open with the cursed warrior appearing from the darkness on the other side. Hello, good job Neji. I thought you said no one was in there. Naruto all yelled at Neji, getting really freaked out now. Even Tenten was beginning to get a little frightened by this turn of events. I did, Neji said as his eye narrowed at the spectral warrior as it soundlessly glided out of the shrine and moved over the disused offering box. Activating his Byakugan once more, the cursed warrior came to a smooth landing at the bottom of the small flight of stairs Neji took in the situation. This presence, it's like Hanoka's. No, it's much weaker, less solid, Neji thought to himself as his Byakugan scanned their opponent. Okay. This is getting way too creepy. Naruto shouted as he pulled out several kunai and tossing them as the warrior, watching as the being had no reaction to his weapons cutting into its armor. Leaping forward, Tenten pulled out one of her scrolls. Unraveling it, she bit her thumb hard enough to draw blood before swiping the red liquid across the seal written in the scroll. Weighted chains. The girl called out as the weapon came from the scroll. Grabbing the weighted chains by the wooden center, Tenten hurled the device at the spirit. When the heavy weapon clashed with its target, the cursed warrior's head was knocked clean off. However, being decapitated did nothing to stop the specter as it started to walk towards them, a plum of blue light escaping from where its head was. What did stop it were the golden chains that shot up from the ground around it. That's as far as you go, Kushina told the warrior as he was bound by her chains. Now then, the woman began with a smirk as her and the others walked up to it, some a little more courageously than others. What exactly are you? Kushina asked the thing as she stopped within an arm's length off it. Like with Naruto and Tenten before her, the cursed warrior seemed unconcerned with her attack. It hadn't struggled even once. The thing didn't talk, and without a face it was hard to know if it was even trying to convey something to them. As Kushina reached out to touch the warrior, she, along with the other, was stunned into silence when the light faded and the armor fell lifelessly within her chains. After a good, long moment, Naruto was the first to talk. Is that supposed to happen? The blonde asked as he tried to stop himself from shaking. With her hand still held out, Kushina twitched a little when she heard the question. No. That's not what's supposed to happen, Kushina said with a murderous look on her face. Not since she was a little girl has anything gotten out of her chakra chains once bound. This would not be allowed to stand. As the woman tried her best not to lose her cool, the other three slowly backed away from the ominous aura coming off of her. Kushina angry was far more terrifying than any ghost. The next morning had the group following Chishima to Moso's residence, that was except for Naruto. Before they headed out for Moso's, Chishima had approached him and told them that Sagi wanted to speak with him personally. So while the others met with Chishima's master, Naruto headed for the feudal lord's palace. Even in a country suffering economically, the palace was still a grand building, though it had been built during better times for the land of birds. Upon his arrival, Naruto was immediately surrounded by palace workers and shuffled along to the audience room. Once there, he was seated before the workers turned to Lord Sagi and bowed, informing him that his guest had arrived. Sagi was a young man a few years older than Naruto with jaw-length blackish-purple hair and black eyes. Thank you. You may resume your daily duties, Sagi told them, sending the workers away with pleasant expression on his face. Turning his attention to Naruto, the young feudal seemed to smile just a little wider. So you're Naruto. Chishima has told me much about you, particularly about how determined you were to help the land of birds when you heard of our troubles, Sagi told the blonde. Huh. Naruto blinked a few times as he stared at the feudal lord. Well, yeah, why wouldn't I want to help someone in need? Naruto asked the prince as he scratched his cheek. It was weird talking to a feudal lord, but perhaps it's because of his age or the way Chishima talks about him, it didn't feel as weird as he was expecting. Not many people would be so quick to help a complete stranger, Sagi told him. We had been banking on Konoha's goodwill when we requested a mission with the little money we could scrounge up, but I hadn't been expecting to hear about someone like you. It brings joy to my heart to know there are people like you in the world, the young feudal lord further told him. Aw shucks. You're going to embarrass me if you go on like that, Naruto said with a big grin as his hand moved to rub the back of his head. Being praised by a feudal lord was quite the ego boost for the blonde. Yes, well, as enjoyable as it would be to have a long talk with you, I'm afraid that's not what I called you here for, Sagi said with a forced cough to clear his throat as a serious expression spread across his face. Okay. Naruto began as he leaned forward, so what did you want me for? The blonde asked when his eyes nearly popped out of his head at the sight of Sagi getting on his hands and knees and bowing before the blonde. The land of birds isn't as wealthy as it once was, and so I haven't the money for a mission, but I beg of you, please look after my sister. The change that's occurred in her has worried me greatly, and in these times I fear for her safety, Sagi pleaded with Naruto as he pressed his forehead into the floor. Please, she means the world to me, the young man said as Naruto watched on, speechless. Well, Naruto did always want to protect a princess like in the storybooks his mom used to read to him. What's the worst that could happen? Toki was a fair-skinned woman with long, dark purple hair with bangs cut off at the jawline to frame her face. She wore a traditional multi-layered kimono of different colors. As the woman walked along the wooden walkway lining the palace, she felt the wind blow gently through her hair as her dark eyes just stared out in front of her, paying attention to nothing in particular. Hey, Toki, right? The woman heard a cheerful voice call out to her. Turning at the waist, she saw a blonde teen run up to her. Glad I found you. See, Sagi asked me to keep you safe, so I'll be. Naruto was telling her when she turned back and continued walking. Don't bother, I'm perfectly fine on my own, the woman told him as she walked away. Her response was enough to immediately sour Naruto's mood as he started to lightly glare at her back. Yeah, well, sorry to break it to you, but I don't care if you're fin on your own, Naruto said as he quickly walked forward to catch up with the princess. I promised to keep an eye on you, so we're stuck with one another, Naruto told her as he walked by her side, keeping the slightly irritated look on his face as he stared at her. Glancing to the side with her own irritated expression, Toki said nothing as she started walking faster. This started a small cycle of Naruto constantly speeding up to Toki's pace. Meanwhile, now that their meeting with Moso was over, Chishima and the other sat in a small food stand that served wings. The son assumes the throne of his father, advised and supported by a wise second in command. At first glance it looks like a stable government, Neji commented as the four of them sat on their stools. What about the rumors that the cursed warrior is actually Lord Awashi come back from the grave? Tenten asked. We know that the cursed warrior we fought last night was most likely a spirit, but without any more information we can only guess at their identity, Kushina remarked as she bit off a small piece of meat. Still, I have my suspicions, Neji said. If we are dealing with the spirit of the previous feudal lord, then why did he pay Kome a visit? Neji questioned. Do you think Kome had something to do with Awashi's death? Kushina asked the boy. If that is true, then the illness that nearly took Sagi's life. Chishima commented, unable to even finish the sentence as his hands clenched into fists. Yes, that illness was mostly likely a failed assassination attempt, Neji finished for the man. Someone isn't pleased with the leadership of the Land of Birds, and Kome looks like the prim suspect, Neji concludes. Standing up, Kushina slapped down their payment onto the counter before turning and leaving the stand. Sensei, where are you going? Tenten asked, leaning back as she watched the woman walk away. Where else? I'm going to speak with the feudal lord, Kushina told them. Where are we going? Naruto asked as he walked beside Toki's carriage along with several of her attendants. It was long after Naruto had started following her around that she had gotten the oxen-powered carriage set up so she could leave the palace. As expected of someone charged with protecting her, Naruto followed Toki without question, but now they weren't even in the city and instead were traveling down a forest-lined path. Like usual, he didn't get any reply from Toki. Ignoring me isn't going to work forever, you know, Naruto told the woman with some annoyance seeping into his voice as he lightly glared at her. The attendants that were accompanying Lady Toki found the boy's attitude towards their princess disgrace, but as someone Lord Sagi personally chose to guard Lady Toki, they found themselves in an uncomfortable situation. The group soon arrived at the lake's edge, the one that Chisama had mentioned before they arrived in the capital. As one of the attendants informed Toki of their arrival, Naruto walked up to the lake and looked around. So what is this place? The blonde asked, even if he knew Toki wasn't going to speak to him, and for a few minutes that was the case. Toki let out a small sigh as she watched the blonde wander around the shore, though staying close enough to her side. His protection was unneeded, but at least he was something different from her typical day-to-day life. When Sagi and I were young, we would often come here with Chishima. This place holds many happy memories for me, as I'm sure it does for Chishima and my brother, Toki told the blonde. Turning back to the woman, Naruto had a surprised look on his face. His expression was soon split by a big grin as he started to walk towards the oxen-carried carriage. See, is it really so hard to ta? Naruto was saying when his honed senses flared up, shouting at him that there was danger. Get down! Naruto shouted as he ran over to Toki while pulling out a kunai. The sudden outburst put the attendants on edge and caused them to nearly draw their swords on Naruto, misunderstanding his actions. However, their attention was quickly moved to the lake when the blonde deflected several shuriken aimed for the princess. From the water, 3 swords rose like fins, slicing through the water as they sped towards the group. Once they were close to the shore, 3 individuals jumped out to land on the shore. All of them looked identical with the same blue and gray outfits that left near to nothing of their body visible. Creating several clones, Naruto rushed in to take the trio on. It wasn't a long fight, a few hits from Naruto had them falling back, diving into the lake once more. Don't think you're getting away from me, Naruto yelled as he started to chase after them, running along the water's surface. His chase didn't last long when an underwater explosion sent a large pillar of water into the air, destroying Naruto's clones and pushed the blonde back to the shore. Coughing up a bit of water, Naruto stared out at the rippling lake. Even if he went now, he'd probably never find those 3 on his own. Standing up, the blonde turned to walk back to Toki, seeing the attendants calming down the oxen that had been spooked by the explosion when he did. Toki, you alright? Naruto asked the princess. Yes, I am unhurt, Toki told the blonde as she fiddled with one of the shuriken. It had embedded itself in the carriage during the assassin's first strike. It was a thin piece of metal with 3 points on it. As she examined the projectile, she briefly wondered what would have happened if it had lodged itself into her neck, but quickly dismissed the idea. if anything were to happen to her then it would sadden her brother greatly. Yeah, well, that's good, Naruto replied as he watched her toss the shuriken to the ground. It irritated him a bit that she wasn't more grateful, but that's just how she's been since the moment he met her. That and she was nearly killed, so he didn't want to get into an argument over her gratitude. As her attendants began to guide the oxen back to the palace, finding it far too dangerous to stay at the lake, Naruto reached down to pick up the shuriken. Finding its shape odd, the blonde pocketed the weapon, perhaps it'll come in handy later. Back at the palace, Sagi has listening to what Kushina had to say. It was unsettling to say the least. Lord Komei is one of our most esteemed strategists, and to accuse him of murdering my father. I hope you have evidence to back this up, Sagi told the woman kneeling before him. He had heard the rumors that Lord Awashi's death had been the result of malicious intent, but he'd always refused to believe that anyone would want to kill his father, let alone someone like Lord Komei. I haven't made any accusations. I'm merely informing you of our investigation so far, Kushina tells the young feudal lord, her eyes never leaving his. And you've come to me instead of Lord Moso, wasn't he the one who hired you? Sagi asked the woman. Sure. He was the one who approved of Moso's plan, but in the end it was still Moso who hired them for this mission. When Kushina didn't answer, Sagi had to look deep into her eye to get her meaning. I see. It's not only Komei you have misgivings with, Sagi said as he closed his eyes. Opening his eyes again, Sagi told her, I don't want to believe what you're saying, but if it is true then I want those responsible brought to justice. You have my full support in whatever you nay, Sagi was saying to her when one of his attendants came running into the room. Forgive me for the intrusion, my lord, but I must inform you that an attempt on Lady Toki's life was made while she ventured out of the palace, the man started long before he knelt beside Kushina. With widened eyes, Sagi immediately rose and ran out of the room, followed closely by Kushina. Stop following me, Toki told Naruto as they walked through the palace. You still going on about that? I've already told you that, Naruto was saying as he walked beside her with his arms folded behind his head when the woman cut him off. Do you intend to follow me into the bath then? I thought you'd have some decency, but perhaps I was wrong, the princess said to him. With a flushed face at the thought, Naruto immediately tried to shake the image out of his head. Ah, okay, I guess I don't have to follow you everywhere, the blonde conceded as his cheeks refused to lose their new red coloring. Toki. Toki. The two of them heard Toki's name being called out. From further down the hall the pair saw an out-of-breath Sagi running towards them with Kushina easily keeping up with him. Sagi, what are you do? Toki was in the middle of asking the man as he came to a stop in front of her, resting his hands on her shoulder as he made an attempt at refilling his lungs with fresh air, however. Are you hurt? Please tell me you are safe, Sagi, still out of breath, asked his sister as he looked her up and down for any sign of harm. With the first smile Naruto's seen from her, Toki removed Sagi's hands from her shoulders. I am unharmed, brother. This shinobi made sure of it, Toki told her brother, looking to Naruto when she spoke about him. But honestly, Toki began as she looked back at Sagi, you shouldn't be running around with your health. That's a relief, Sagi said with a cheerful expression before his attention turned to Naruto. Walking up to the blonde, Sagi told him, thank you. If anything had happened to Toki I wouldn't know what to do. Well, I am pretty awesome, Naruto said with a big grin. Well then, Toki, Sagi was saying as he turned back to his sister, only to see that she was much further down the hall now, having walked away while he was talking to Naruto. His smile withered slightly at her actions, but remembering her smile had the corners on his lips remaining curved upward. It had been so long since he seen her smile at all. Was it because of you? Sagi wondered as he looked back at Naruto. I'd like to talk with Toki for a bit, so if you'd excuse me, Sagi told the mother-son pair as he started to walk after the young woman. As the man walked away, Kushina came up to Naruto. I want you to tell me what happened and don't leave out any details, Kushina told the teen. It had been some time since Zabuza and Haku came to Konoha, and between the two of them Haku was adjusting far better than Zabuza was. The girl had started walking around the village the day after they arrived, speaking with the people and getting used to the village layout. Zabuza, on the other hand, Zabuza spent his days sitting around the small two-bedroom apartment they were put into while the village sorted out what would happen to them. Sitting in a wooden chair, staring at the white wall in front of him, the man replayed his first meeting with the third Hokage in his head. Walking into the round office behind Kakashi and the blonde kid, the man watched uninterested as the blonde moved ahead of everyone else to great Hiruzen like he'd known the old man his whole life. Without a doubt the Hokage had been informed of their arrival before they'd even walked past the main gate, not only from messages Kakashi most like sent from Wave but by the shinobi on lookout. He and Haku had both noticed them. Since entering the village they had at least 4 sets of eyes on them at all times. Stretching out his senses he could detect 5 shinobi watching his every move, and he was certain that many more were hidden in ways that he couldn't detect their presences. They want us to know we're being watched. If we tried anything now we'd be dead before we made it out of the building, Zabuza thought to himself. He and Haku could take down many of them, but they'd quickly be overwhelmed by sheer numbers. As Naruto finished talking to the third, Hiruzen's gaze moved to Zabuza, and the moment their eyes met a chill ran down the ex-Kiri shinobi's spine. His eyes betrayed the gentle grandfatherly expression he'd given Naruto. The look he was giving Zabuza, it was the look of a man befitting the title of Kage. They were the eyes of a man who could kill him should he make the wrong move. Zabuza will never forget those piercing eyes. Nothing of real importance had been said during that first meeting. The third Hokage had greeted the two of them, told them that he was surprised by the prospect of having them join the village, and then sent them to this apartment to wait while the real meeting was organized. Even after their next meeting, where his mind had been pried open and picked clean, Zabuza had yet to hear an answer. I never should have listened to that brat, Zabuza thought as an image of Naruto popped into his head. He got too emotional and bought into a promise that was too good to believe. The village was probably just holding him here while they argued with Kiri over how expensive his corpse was. Taking a break from his paranoid thought, the man tilted his head ever so slightly to the side as he asked, "And just who are you?" Behind the man, sitting on a now open windowsill with her back to the street below, was a woman with white hair. The woman sitting there wore a revealing red outfit consisting of an open vest that cut off just below her large, bandage-wrapped, elbow-length finger-less gloves with armored plates on the back of her hands, a short shirt over more bandages with the inside being white and the back of the garment being much longer than the front, and finally armored high heels with an armored strap on her left leg that held her Anbu standard short katana. Her wild, white hair was pulled back with a multicolored rope with bells attached to it, leaving 2 bangs to frame her face and ice blue eyes. Above and below her left eye were light pink flower petal tattoos. More of those tattoos were on the left side of her midriff as well as scattered along her left leg. You can call me Kagura, Kagura told the man as a light breeze blew in through the window she was sitting in. I'm not interested in pleasant little chats, Zabuza told her. He must be quite the spectacle for one of Konoha's elite to come and pay him a visit. That should be fine. I only came by to ask a question, Kagura tells him. When Zabuza made no reply, she asked her question, what made you come to Konoha? It was Naruto, wasn't it? Kagura said when her didn't answer her. When Kagura asked her question, Zabuza's body tensed up for but a second, but it was enough for her. He has a way of doing that, and the funny thing is, Kagura told him as she turned her gaze away from the back of Zabuza's head to the bright blue sky behind her. I don't think he's even aware of the effect he has on people. And I care, because. Zabuza asked after a moment. Hearing him, a smirk spread across Kagura's face as she leaned back, keeping herself on the windowsill by holding onto it. You and I are a lot alike. I wanted to be Hokage, to be the strongest, and like you I didn't care who I had to step on to reach that goal, she told the man. If it wasn't for him, I probably would have turned against my village like you did as well, Kagura said as she closed her eyes and thought back to the past. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. How can she just refuse me like that? Every single time she waves me away like I'm nothing. Kagura shouted as she repeatedly punched the tree before her, putting a larger and larger dent into the trunk with each punch. Once again she had approached Tsunade and requested to be her apprentice, and like every time before she was turned down without any thought. Hitting the tree on final time, her hand began to tremble with rage as she kept it pressed against the wood. Reaching up with her other hand she removed her Anbu mask and turning so it could stare back at her. She's just afraid of my power. They're all afraid of my power. She refuses to train me because they don't want me to get stronger. The teen thought to herself as her grip tightened on the cat-like mask. Tossing her mask to the side, her attention then turned to the gray Anbu armor she wore. In her anger, Kagura began to tear the armor off, starting with her arms and moving to the vest and other segments, tossing them wherever they may land. Soon she was left only in her skin-tight black clothes as she fell down to her hands and knees. I'll show them all how wrong they were to oppose me. Kagura mentally raged as her hands clenched her hands into fists around the blades of grass under her palms. As she wallowed in her emotions, she failed to notice a young Naruto walk up to her. It wasn't until the boy's feet came into view that Kagura knew he was there. Jerking her head up, she glared at the kid, having nearly knocked him away in the heat of the moment. When she saw his face, she instantly knew who he was. Who didn't know who this kid was? Damn brat, he's lucky I don't use him for target practice, the woman thought, annoyed that he got this close without her noticing. Damn, she was letting all of this get to her. After a moment, the blonde opened his mouth to say something and Kagura waited for whatever stupid shit he was about to tell her. What she hadn't expected was for him to ask why she was crying. The moment his question left his mouth, Kagura's harsh expression softened. Bring her hand up, she dabbed a little moisture from her cheek before staring at her hand. When did she start crying? As she stared at her hand for what felt like eternity, Naruto held out a worn handkerchief for her to wipe her tears away, pulling her out of her thoughts in the process. Snatching the square cloth from his hand, Kagura sat up and started to wipe her face. I don't need your help, the teen told him as she moved from one side of her face to the other with the handkerchief. Even though her tone was harsh, it didn't stop Naruto from smiling at her. After that, she got roped into spending the rest of the day helping the blonde with his kunai training. She didn't know what it was at the time, but something about him just made her smile whenever he was around, and soon she found herself following him around and helping him out from the shadows. Even if he hardly ever knew she was watching over him, she was content just knowing he was safe. If I hadn't vented my anger in the woods that day, I probably never would have met him, Kagura said, smiling as she thought about it. After a moment her smile faded as she sat back up straight. If I hadn't met him, I doubt I'd still be a Konoha shinobi, the woman admitted. Looking back over at Zabuza, Kagura told him, if Naruto is willing to put his faith in you, then so will I. For the first time Zabuza turned his head to look at the woman, only for the windowsill to be vacant. This village is full of annoying people, Zabuza remarked, the bandage covering the bottom half of his face hiding the smirk he had. Jumping from roof to roof, Kagura had a wide smile on her face. You better come back in one piece, Naruto. I'll lose my reason to become strong if anything happened to you, the woman thought as she sped along as quickly as she could. Tsunade would kill her if she was late for training.